It was in the late summer of 79 A.D. when Mount Vesuvius, which had been more active since the early summer, erupted in one of the worst disasters in the history of the Roman Empire, and destroyed the city of Pompeii. Years later, Pliny the Younger had this to say about what he saw in a letter to his friend Tacitus. Ashes were already falling, not as yet very thickly. I looked round. A dense black cloud was coming up behind us, spreading over the earth like a flood. "Let us leave the road while we still can see," I said, "or we shall be knocked down and trampled underfoot in the dark by the crowd behind." We had scarcely sat down to rest when darkness fell. Not the dark of a moonless or cloudy night, but as if a lamp had been put out in a closed room. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius would go on to be one of the most famous natural disasters in all of human history. But there was another, lesser known city that felt the wrath of Mount Vesuvius that bleak summer's day some 2,000 years ago. Located on the Bay of Naples, and just 18 kilometers or 11 miles from her more famous sister city, and 197 kilometers or 122 miles away from Rome, the heart of the empire, Herculaneum was smaller, with only 5,000 people, but it was wealthier than Pompeii. According to Greek legend, the town was founded by Heracles himself, but in reality it was the Greeks that founded the city in the 4th century BC. They named the city Heraclion, and as the centuries passed, Heraclion was involved in the social war from 91 to 88 BC, at which point it was absorbed into the expanding Roman Empire and became known as a seaside retreat for the upper class of Roman society. Much of what we know about the timeline of events comes from Pliny the Younger, who was 17 at the time, and was one of the only people to write about his experiences before, during, and after the eruption. His uncle, Pliny the Elder, was a naval officer and was stationed in the nearby town of Stabiae, which was also affected by the eruption. Pliny the Younger said that his uncle sailed to Herculaneum to try and save people, but as a result was trapped in the town and died. According to Pliny the Younger, it began at 1 p.m., when Mount Vesuvius violently erupted, spewing volcanic ash as high as 27 to 33 kilometers or 17 to 21 miles into the sky. Initially, Herculaneum was in a favorable spot west of Mount Vesuvius due to the winds, only getting a few centimeters of fallen ash, while Pompeii received enough ash to collapse houses. It was during this time that the majority of residents decided to leave, while others thought it would pass, a choice they would later come to regret. About 12 hours after the initial eruption, around 1 a.m. the next morning, Mount Vesuvius's eruptive column completely collapsed, causing the first of 6 pyroclastic surges. These pyroclastic surges, which are far more disastrous than the more common than the pyroclastic flows, came barreling at Herculaneum with a mixture of ash and hot gas, reaching temperatures of 800 degrees Celsius or 1500 degrees Fahrenheit, and traveling extremely fast, around 300 miles an hour, and reaching Herculaneum, which was about 8 miles away, in less than a minute. This then happened 5 more times over the next 48 hours. The eruption lasted 2 days, after which Herculaneum was covered in 20 meters or 66 feet of ash, preserving Herculaneum incredibly well. The pyroclastic surges not only preserved stone and marble, but, with the intense heat, wood, paintings, and even instantly carbonized people. In the days and weeks that followed the destruction of Herculaneum, Emperor Titus, who had only been emperor for a couple months at the time of the eruption, personally sent council members and senators to the area around the destroyed Herculaneum and donated millions of sestertii to the affected and wounded. During the years and decades after the eruption, average Romans were well aware of the disaster of Herculaneum, but after the fall of the Roman Empire in 476 AD, Herculaneum was forgotten to time. Over 1,000 years passed when a French prince was building a house in the town of Granitello. During the construction, he had heard local stories of men building wells containing antique artworks and sculptures. So, in 1709, he acquired the site of a recently dug well and dug further, in hopes of finding priceless artifacts. Underneath this well, he found a remarkably preserved Roman theater. News of this discovery traveled to King Charles III of Spain, who began the first major excavations in 1738. After the initial excavation in the early 18th century, the excavation of Herculaneum has been going on in bits and pieces. It has been very difficult to fully excavate the town compared to Pompeii, as Pompeii only has a layer of 4 meters of ash, compared to Herculaneum's 20 meters. But that hasn't stopped numerous artifacts from being discovered, like the Herculaneum papyri. The Herculaneum papyri are notable because ever since they were discovered in 1752, the over 1,800 scrolls have been virtually unreadable. That is, until 2023, when a group of scientists announced the Vesuvius Challenge. The goal of the Vesuvius Challenge was to extract 4 passages from a certain scroll for a chance to win $700,000. Within months of the challenge's announcement, in January 2024, the challenge was won by a 21-year-old student from the University of Nebraska. As it stands now, only approximately 20 to 25% of Herculaneum has been excavated. Who knows what secrets lie in this ancient Roman city for almost 2,000 years?